It is always better to be over-prepared than not prepared enough. I have a whole folder that I keep that has my lesson plan for the day. It has my roll sheet for the day. It has the students' grades. It has their quizzes. It has their, like the whole attendance, just to keep who all is in my class, who's dropping, who's changing over to someone else's class, or whatever. I keep really good records. I also have a copy of my PowerPoint. I tend to do PowerPoints. If you have that option, they're great. If not, what you need to do is draw out an outline of how your class is going to go. One of the things you have to understand, though, when you're planning, you may get to talking about in class, especially in a college classroom, students may get really interested in something, and it may be something you weren't expecting. And so you need to be flexible enough to say, okay, well, maybe 10 or 15 minutes here or there for a discussion, if it's something that they're really into and that's important, that's okay. That's okay. You don't want to have them take over your whole class, because it's not their job to take over the class. It's your job to make sure they get the information they need. But it is certainly okay for them to ask questions and discuss things that are interesting to them. That's part of education. So you need to be prepared that that may happen, and you may not get everything you've done or everything you've prepared to do for that class done that one day. That's okay. Run it over to the next class and get it done a little quicker. You can always do that, but make sure you're over-prepared, meaning if you've got an hour and 20-minute class, prepare for an hour and 30 minutes. Have a little extra 10-minute activity in there in case your class actually runs faster than you thought. Maybe no one butts in, and you need a little something extra to take up that last 10 minutes. It's also not a crime to let them out 5 minutes early. I wouldn't, if it's an hour and 20-minute class, I wouldn't let them out 45 minutes early, unless it's something like a test. I mean, if they're taking a test and certain ones are finishing, you're letting them leave. That's one thing. But overall, I wouldn't be letting them out 45 minutes early. You probably need to keep them for the length of the class. Keeping those good records are definitely one way to prepare for your class, because then you kind of walk in saying, okay, I'm prepared. I think I can handle at least the way the class is going to go. You have an idea of what's going to happen. But there are certain things you just can't plan for. Like I said, the discussion. It may happen. And especially, kids here in America, they tend to be relatively talkative in class. And you will always have one or two students that could possibly teach your class for you. And that doesn't mean they know more than you. That just means they like to talk. And they will come in and they will say lots of things in class. And you should welcome that person. You should welcome their comments. Quite often, they're very intelligent students that are trying to talk in your class, but you should not let them take over your class, because they will. Okay, they won't stop talking. And so what you need to be able to do is be prepared to politely say, well, no, that's interesting. I think you've got a good point. Now, what do you think? And go to someone else, or work off of it and then do a little lecture off of what they're saying or something. And don't let them totally take over your class. And every once in a while you say, will you wait just a minute? Again, be polite. Wait just a minute, I think I've got something I need to say about this. And they will. And if you do it to them 2 or 3 times, they will tend not to take over your entire class. But always be polite about it. Don't say, no, hush up, I don't want to hear that. That will wind you up in a mess, and they'll not like you. And then you'll have a problem in your class. But just be polite. Say, please, just a second, I've got something I need to say. That sort of thing, and they'll listen, I promise you. Being polite, the 2 P's, being polite and professional, are the 2 things you need to remember about when you're in a classroom atmosphere. Always be nice to your students, and they will tend to return the niceness. Again, you may have a problem student. I am not going to guarantee, even in a classroom, that you will not have a problem student. Someone who's loud, someone who's obnoxious, maybe one of those people who's going to talk a lot in your class, and maybe not even didn't do their homework and doesn't have much to talk about, but they're trying to get you off track. And they will do that. You need to be prepared to deal with this person. Again, politeness. And when I say professional, that means don't get personal. Don't ever say anything that directly attacks the student. Don't ever say anything that reflects on you personally. You need to be careful about showing emotion. You may feel like crying. Don't. It's a spectacle. They want to see it. It's like watching a soap opera. Of a sudden, your classroom becomes some kind of entertainment venue. You don't want that. They will have more respect for you, just like dressing nicely, if you maintain a professional distance. That doesn't mean don't be caring, don't be nurturing. It does mean don't get all wrapped up in everything they're doing. You have your own life that you have to live. You don't have to live theirs for them. If they want to tell you all about the drama over the weekend, say, why don't you come during my office hours and we'll visit about it? Because that's a little more informal time. Don't have them do that in class. I often walk into my class and say, hey, did everyone have a nice weekend? And they'll say, yeah. I say, well, did anything exciting happen? And they'll give me a sentence or two. Oh, yeah, I had a birthday or something like that. And then they'll stop. So I'm friendly, I have a smile, I'm polite, I hear a little bit about what's going on in their lives, but it doesn't become any kind of big drama. If you do have the student who busts in, just comes in and is being rude, interrupts you, politely ask him or her to stop. If they do not, you may take them out in the hall and visit with them momentarily. Again, be polite, be professional. Visit with them momentarily. You say something to the effect of, I find your behavior a bit disrespectful, not only to myself, but to the class. Always refer to the rest of the class, because then that says I care about my class. This is not just a personal thing with you. I'm not trying to accuse you, this person you're talking to, but that, I want my class to run well. And so they'll see that concern, and often they'll listen. Okay, yes, Mrs. Campbell, I see what you're saying. And they'll go in and sit quietly and be good. If they do not, ask them to leave the class. They should not return to your class until you have had a private conference with them, either in office hours or by appointment. This is the type of appointment you have in your office hours. You need to have a witness if there was a behavior problem. If it goes so far that there's such a behavior issue, you may need to have a visit not only with that student, but with your administrator, either the person who runs your particular group of classes, or with the chair of the department, or with the undergraduate advisor. There will be someone, an administrator, that you can visit with the student, an automatic witness that will be there to gauge the student's behavior. You may just end up having to ask the student to leave the class, period, and they may have to drop the class if they're that much of a behavior issue. So rare. I've never had it happen, but I do know people who have had it happen. Just be prepared that it could, if they get violent. And I won't say that it won't happen, because it has happened in other schools. There are ideas of school shootings and this sort of thing, which is scary. But if there's any reference that you think the student could get violent or over the top, make sure you have the number for the university police in your phone. And always have your phone on you when you go into class. I had a young girl. She was not often a behavior problem, but she would often speak up in class and would have a tone in her voice that was not pleasant. She was not being polite. I was always very polite and professional with her, but she was not always the same way back. And she was not happy with the grade that I had given her. And one class period, I worried that she might speak up and cause a problem. So before I went to that class, I notified 2 other people, and I said, hey, I may have a problem in my class today. Would you please be ready, or around, and make sure there are people that have the time. They don't have a class at the same time, or maybe they're a person that does have a class, but they're in the classroom right next to you. Someone who can step in and intervene if you need to. If you have a phone, which is a good idea, to have your cell phone, have it on speed dial, where you can press 1 and call, and they will immediately call and notify the student. Will you please sit down, or will you please leave the class? Otherwise, I'm going to be forced to call the campus police. And just notify them, again, professionally and politely, that you are willing to take action. Do not make that threat without meaning it. Because it should be something you are willing to do. And just be aware of that. Again, if it's just a student that's speaking up and making loud jokes in class, and maybe you need to talk to them outside, you don't have to immediately threaten to call the campus police. It needs to be someone you really think might become physical or violent, not just disturbing the class. If it's someone who's just disturbing your class, you can ask them to leave. If it's someone you think might become physical or violent against you or any other student in the class, pick up a desk and throw it, that sort of thing, then yes, you need to be ready to call the campus police. And those people usually will show themselves to be that way. Over a number of classes, you'll have problems with them, and they'll get up and yell at you or this sort of thing. If you have that kind of behavior in a student, just be prepared. And that's the best way I know to explain that.